It's up to you, however you want to work on it.
I think because I sit most of the time, maybe even though it's still a solo. Just
Sure, then go ahead. I'm sorry, I just moved that
No,
way.
that's fine.
You can bring that back. I'll put that around for a moment too if I need it. So Christopher, what are you going to play?
The girl with the flaxen hair.
Oh.
You can have the better pronunciation than I can.
We'll go with the English for now.
We had debates over how to say it last year.
Oh, that's cute. So, anything in particular that you wanted us to work on, or you open for anything?
I'm pretty open for anything, yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. As you play, I might get up and move around a little. I might not.
Okay.
So don't let that disturb you.
Sure.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Thanks so much. So I have a couple ideas of directions to go, one in particular, but as you play, Christopher, typically if you're playing for a while, is there any place that you find is less comfortable in your body, something that, gosh, I wish that didn't get tense, or?
Normally my back.
Your back. Okay. Yay, that plays totally into what I want us to look at. And so what I was thinking of was looking a little bit at the arm structure. Now the arm structure is wholly related to the spine and balancing, letting it be balanced over our weight-bearing spine. We have just a short amount of time today, so here's what I suggest. We do a quick little review of the anatomy of the spine, it's what the weight-bearing portion is, and all the stuff we've done, say, in PED, and looked at some during your lessons. But then we're going to look at the anatomy of the arm a little bit. I'd like to look at how big an arm is, what joints are there, and some of the qualities of motion. Just what are the easy ways in which it can move, and then relate that back to playing. Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay, so if I were to ask you to tell me about a spine if I knew nothing, how would you describe how big it is, its structure, its function?
Well, there's, I guess, a lot more to it, like in us, than maybe what we like think about when we just kind of like go back here.
Yeah.
And then it's more like the center of our body, more than further back or forward. And, that I think that it, when breathing, it gathers and lengthens.
Mm-hmm. On exhale, right? It gets a little, it returns to its height. Uh-huh. Great, that's fantastic. Let's just take a peek at Fred for a sec, just to reacquaint ourselves, and you can actually get in there and touch the guy. It won't hurt him. He doesn't mind. He's used to it. And so what I want you to notice about Fred is that he's not balanced on his stand. Is as you said, there's this portion back here of your spine that you can feel, the bumpy portion, right? And this portion, its job is what? What is the function of this back portion of the spine?
Is that? This, but is it like more like the protection sort of part?
Yes, sir. Right? Because our spinal cord lives behind it.
Yes.
So it forms protection for that, as well as a lot of muscles attached there as well, so it can move and all of those great things. It's the portion that lives in front of it that is actually the portion that you and I want to allow to do its job of bearing and distributing our weight, right? That each vertebrae gets bigger from top to bottom, and as it has more weight that it bears up and distributes downward as well. As you sit, it's important to know, or stand frankly, that your spine meets other structures, right? So that the weight that is passed through the spine comes through the thick part of the lowest bone here, the sacrum, into the pelvis, and it either goes to the hip joint, or if you're sitting, to the sitting bones, right? I don't know if on this chair, if you can sense your sitting bones on that chair. You feel that? Great. Skull, of course, also balances on top as well. So that kind of gives you, again, that idea of the length of the spine, basically from, here in my mouth, basically from the base of that skull all the way down to about where the pelvic floor is, or the hip joints themselves. Now, as you play, and as we examine the arm structure now, I'd like you to just check in with every breath, Christopher. Do you feel those sitting bones on the chair? Or have we changed in such a way that maybe, have you pulled away a bit?
Okay.
I saw, if you were to describe maybe where your balance was, how would you describe it?
Balance is more, I think, like on my legs, I think more than like further back on the sitting bones.
Yeah, I like the further back, I think is a good way to put it. I agree, because as you were playing, I saw a lot of kind of leaning forward, and you can, if you rock in your sitting bones, realize, man, I have a lot of motion that's possible without losing contact with the chair at the sitting bones, right? So you can lean forward, but it's not leaning forward in such a way where you're then having to hold yourself up muscularly. Does that make sense? And so that's what I saw a little of. Take a peek at this guy right here. This is our ideal balance. You can move anywhere. Yes, you can move anywhere from there. And all the muscles that are on the outer portion of the torso there, not holding you up. Can all rest on your skeleton and get passed through the spine. So this right here would be if you sat sharp. Want to sit sharp for a sec? Remember how we, yeah, exactly. You're not doing that. Thank you. This would be, I don't know, kind of the typical low brass players, whatever, right? And you weren't doing this either. Rather, you had more a combination almost of those two, don't you think? Yeah, a little here. Yeah. So maybe it feels. What did you say? Back a little bit.
Well,
to
I
sit
thought
on
like here, like it was on my legs, but then like yeah.
Yeah, balance feels.
Yeah.
I like that. So keep that in mind as we move forward.
Okay.
Now, moving forward. Describe an arm to me.
Arm.
How big is it? What are its parts?
An arm is about like your maybe like a little bit longer than your torso length. It has the like first joint here being the shoulder and then the elbow as well. But it's separate from like the rest of this, so it can be more free, I guess.
Yeah, that's true.
We have lots of, because the joints have different motions that you can do with them and stuff.
Yeah.
Different actions, I suppose.
I love it. Now, a lot of that is very true, and we're going to reinforce that.
Okay.
There is some refinement we can do, however, and specifically it's going to be what are the joints of the arm? Okay, there are actually 4 joints in the arm itself. So here's your entire arm structure, and you'll notice there's a little bit more there than what you were describing. Frankly, what you were describing is what I always thought too, right? It didn't start somewhere out here and that's my arm. When in reality, the only joint of your arm that meets the torso is actually right here, the sternum meeting the clavicle. All right, so I'm going to call that the SC joint rather than the sternoclavicular joint because I'm lazy. But in any case, that's the joint where the actual arm structure meets the spine. Kind of neat, right? So the next joint we have here is where the humerus meets the scapula. We'll map that in a minute. So it actually meets the shoulder blade rather than the torso itself. An elbow, a wrist, right? We're not going to spend time mapping that in detail today. We're going to spend time on the upper arm. So there's that SC joint we were just talking about. And what's really important to know about, well, a joint, what do joints allow us to do? Yeah. I mean, if we want to be really, boil it down, a joint is a place from which movement is possible. So if that's true, that means we move here. Which, to me, again, I don't want to superimpose my own lackings in my own body map, but that kind of blew my mind. I didn't realize that I moved from that place. But let's check it out. You can see that an SC joint, you can see, there it is, moves a lot. This is just the upward and downward motion. But if it's possible to, without dropping the poor sacks there, put a hand on your collarbone there and start moving your arm around. Move forward and backward. Move up and down. What do you notice with that collarbone?
Yeah, it is moving.
Moves a lot, doesn't it? Kind of interesting. So the joint is right here where that clavicle meets the sternum itself. So that, Christopher, is going to be one major thing we want to add into your body map, is that joint exists and that collarbone moves, okay? And we're going to touch on our shoulder blades as well today, and when we have more time, you and I can look at this with a little bit more detail as well. But suffice it to say, shoulder blades can move a lot too. Now, when you think of your shoulder blades, kind of what comes to mind when you consider them? How can they move if you were to describe it?
In all directions, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Like depending on what you do, like kind of going in or coming out, or also as well as like sort of all directions sort of thing, like each way.
Yeah.
Go kind of in and outward too.
Yeah, in or out, up or down, right? All of that's possible. Plus, they're independent of each other, right? So I can reach this way with one arm and that way with another, and they can do the very different motions. So your shoulder blades, what I want to let you know about them is that they are not attached to the ribs, fixed to the ribs. They're attached via soft tissues that can move, all right? So they aren't stuck in a position. So they glide and move all over the place, which you described very nicely. So that, hey, if you were a trombonist, we can do things like that. Yay. Now, here's one of the other extra things I want us to think about for today. And that is the second arm joint. Our first one is that SC joint. Our second one is our humeroscapular joint. Now, your humeroscapular joint is where the arm bone, the humerus, meets the scapula. Can you kind of picture that there, how that's working? Here's from the front, and here's from the back. Okay? If you feel under your armpits, you can kind of feel that ball of the humerus. Yeah. Which, by the way, gives you an idea, it's pretty far away from your ribs, isn't it? Uh-huh. Yeah. Now, the arm joint itself, the humerus has a large ball at the top of that bone, and the socket in the side of the scapula is really small. It's like the size of a thumbprint. Yeah, so it's not a ball and socket joint there. It's really in there. And rather, it's just barely in this teeny depression. Okay, rest there. Which means I can move all over the silly place. Yeah. If it were a larger socket, your motion would be more limited. It's also why people end up with shoulder injuries a lot, simply because it can move in so many crazy ways. Now, here's your scapula from the side. You get the idea of how that meets the shoulder blade. Okay? Sticking with me, it's a lot of pictures, I know. We'll move, don't worry. And all of this balances over that central weight-bearing spine. So that's a nice picture from above to give you a little bit of that context. So now when you're sitting, when we play, you can picture that all slung above. Okay? Someday we'll do the fascia. That's kind of cool too. But here's what I want to check out with you. There's something called humeroscapular rhythm. I don't have a good picture. But what humeroscapular rhythm is scientists who study how humans move have noticed that little babies in the womb, one of the first motions they do is movements of their arms. And their arms move in such a way that the humerus moves, the clavicle follows, the scapula follows that. So humeroclavicular scapular rhythm. Okay, so if you want to put your sax down for a sec, we'll come back to that. But I want you to explore how all of these bones and these two joints relate to each other. Okay? So if we were to swim, let's swim with one arm first. Put a hand on your clavicle, and we're going to do a forward crawl motion. Tell me a little bit about what you notice.
Kind of feel like the clavicle kind of doing what the arm is, just at a obviously smaller level, but you can kind of feel it how it comes forward and kind of goes around.
Yeah, even try backward. You feel like it moves up and down, forward, backward. And you notice that the scapula, the shoulder blade, what does it do?
Does similar sort of thing. Kind of comes out when we go around. Like this.
Yeah, as I move my arm out, it's going to follow, right? Exactly, so it can almost travel around a little bit. True. Excellent. But it just kind of tags along, doesn't it? Yeah, it doesn't take any muscular effort to make my shoulder blade do anything. Now, it is possible to reverse the order and try to move with your scapula first. And that's not something that's particularly, it's not, if you do that, you don't break yourself or anything. There's some professional movers, dancers and whatnot that will do that. Baseball pitchers, if you've ever heard that they're leading with the shoulder, that's what they're doing, is they're moving here first rather than throwing, having the humerus move first. So it's not that it's illegal, you can't do it, but the most natural primal movement that we want to enjoy is going to be this humeroscapular rhythm. Move my arm, clavicle, and scapula just follow. Now, let's try, I'm trying to think here, because you sing too. Let's try this. We'll come back to your sax for a second. But what I want you to do is we're going to swim for a sec. Blow your air out. Release and take a breath. Excellent. Pause for a minute. Now hold your hands out. We're going to rotate. Can you rotate? Can you sense where the actual rotation is of the humerus and the scapula, where that joint is? And you can just let the scapula themselves kind of chill. A little bit you're reading with them. Better? Can you kind of sense the width of where that joint is?
Yeah.
It's quite a distance, again, away from the torso itself, right? So we have that width. We can swim, maintaining that width, just knowing it's there. Do, hey!
Hey!
Nice. Swim with one arm and hand on the other. Hey!
Hey!
Nice. I liked that. To me, that was even better. There was more movement you were allowing yourself here. What did you experience?
I was kind of thinking like how this doesn't really have anything to do with what's going on here.
Excellent. Yeah, excellent. I mean, the scapula will just ride around the ribs without really relating. The ribs move on their own, it's free of the shoulder blades. This joint is nowhere near where the actual ribs are, right? And that's a beautiful thing to remind ourselves of, is here. Look at how far away that distance is. Last thing I want to show you, check out on your collarbone. you walk out a little bit to where it starts to curve up and feel down a bit, if you start moving your arm, yeah, underneath it a bit, you'll feel there's a bony protrusion there. So follow the collarbone out to where it starts to curve up a bit. Come right down, and you'll feel there's a little bony thing. You feel that now? Yeah, you got it. That is what we have right here called the coracoid process, which is actually, where is it? It's the front of the shoulder blade. Isn't that cool? I never realized my shoulder blade came over. And it's underneath the collarbone, which tells you, Christopher, just further demonstrates that you truly, your arm structure does not rest on the torso. There's literally a bone in the way. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
All right, so as you swim for a sec, with that knowledge, yeah, take a couple breaths. Scapula just follows, that's awesome. Stand at balance and just sense, take a breath or two. Anything different here that you've
Yeah,
sensed?
it's kind of like more freedom in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So having like muscles tighten and such.
Yeah.
So,
So go ahead and sit, you can play your sax for a sec here, because I want to see if there's any difference that you find in some of the movements and the freedom you just found when swimming and when looking at those pictures to when you play. See if we can have that same, the movements that are possible. If you're reaching forward, Christopher, especially for you, your left hand, that as that hand comes forward, the arm leads and shoulder blade just follows rather than like here or there. Try playing a little bit.
tension and stuff. I mean, I feel more here. Oh, not more, but I mean, I'm feeling more in this shoulder than I am in this shoulder at the moment.
Okay. More tension or freedom?
More tension.
Tension here.
Yes.
Okay.
So I was trying to kind of see like where I could. It just kind of. I think it kind of depends on like where the saxophone is too, which I kind of have been exploring with, like if it's higher or lower or what's more natural for that, but because it rests here, so I think there's a lot of tension that's riding through.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that you don't want to, feel that you have to hold it up.
Right.
And if you're holding it up and fixing to do so, can it rest without
would it be better if it rests kind of against the body instead?
I wonder if if you're able to move, that there's not a position that you find, Christopher, that's it, that's the best way to be. But you can move within. So it could be resting, it could move away. Because as you're playing, first of all, it was much improved in terms of the first time I saw you play this arm was really leading from the scapula. So that arm was much easier. So that's awesome. Balance around the center of the spine, much easier. And so now as you play, could there be micro movements at that second joint, first joint too, but that as you play, there's not one position I got, now my arms are good, but you can move within?
Okay.
Yeah. all right, what do you notice that time when you,
Yeah, I felt a lot more freedom and like less tension in my back.
Yeah.
I'm still feeling a lot in this shoulder.
there, yep, yeah. And what was interesting too, to me, was, maybe I'm wrong, but it seemed like there's a little bit of hesitancy to allow those little micro movements. It kind of is, I think right now, okay, I got my position. Is that fair to say? Yeah, does that resonate with you? It seems like I got my spot, that's it, I'm good. Whereas I would encourage you, and you and I can keep working on this as, over time and check in separate from voice lessons too. And just see, where am I picturing those joints? How would I describe the motions? Am I allowing them, the motion there to still be present even as I play? I think you'll feel less pressure then to hold the instrument up. It can rest rather, if that makes sense. I think much more similarly to how the weight of our skull can be passed down through our spine, the weight of the instrument can then be passed down as well, rather than held up from below. I think that's going to be a big thing.
Okay.
So some micro movements I think we want to look at, continuing to explore really how does this new kind of addition to your arm structure relate to movements, right? Collarbone, scapula, and where those joints really are. Yeah, and the other thing I'd like to talk with you about, we just didn't have time to today, and I suspect this will have a big impact on it too, is soft tissue in terms of how it also supports your arm structure. Your arm structure is supported from your spine, from the central weight-bearing portion of the spine, but you also have soft tissues, fascia, for example, the connective tissue that kind of binds things together, that actually ends up supporting your arm structure, Christopher, from above. This is pretty cool stuff. It even wraps from above your eyebrows over the skull, attaching at both the scapula and the collarbones. It's kind of like a suspension bridge that if you had, think of the Golden Gate Bridge or something, that your spine is really the big pillar of support, and the fascia would be like the cables, that extend out from there. That's what we have here. It's springy, it's elastic, it's kind of like a hair tie, sorry if this grosses you out, but it's kind of like being supported from above. You can have your finger, the weight rest here. I can pull on it and add strain, pulling down or fixing into a position, or I can just let my arm structure be buoyantly supported from above.
Would you say it's better to have the section like rest on like the neck, on the neck through the neck strap, rather than more on the thumb of my hand?
Well, I think the weight,
a lot of it holds on here, and I guess if I would bring it up more, it could sit, but I just have to figure out where.
Right.
Could set. That was the twist. I don't know if that would be better to have it kind of more resting on that instead of, because I think that's why it feels so much tension.
I think we want to use both to your advantage. That you can use the neck strap if you're supported around and organized around the central weight-bearing spine. Then that shouldn't be too taxing, I believe. Okay. I'm so happy, Christopher, to get in touch with a couple saxophonists out there too and ask how do they look at that. But I would imagine, you want to utilize the neck strap. You still will be some weight that's going to end up being passed there, but so I think still freeing this arm structure and is going to be incredibly helpful for that. And we'll have to piece that together, I think, from there.
Sure.
Does that sound good? Yeah. Any other questions about any of this stuff we just looked at?
I don't think so. I think it's kind of good.
Yeah.
Explore more with it. So.
Collarbones move, my friend. Collarbones move, right? Who knew? Collarbones move and those shoulder blades follow.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, so feel free to mess around with that a little bit, and like I said, if you have any questions as time goes on, just let me know.
Okay.
Sound good?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. I did keep you over because we knew I would. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll look into that neck strap question with a little